sadly, Joe Biden's worldview on China is, you used before the word naive. I think that captures it well. It's hopelessly naive. Gosh, the Chinese, what could be the problem? Well, they're malevolent communists who want to dominate us, who want to conquer us, and that's part of their strategy. And I think that Joe is simply not equipped and doesn't even understand the threat exists.
Malevolent commies. That's what Ted Cruz says about China's Communist Party. Well, we've got somebody who just broke a story about Western media involving China. Our friend Raheem Kassam is in the house. He is the host, or co-host, I should say, of the War Room podcast extravaganza. He's there with Bannon and some other folks, Stephen Miller. Mr. Raheem Kassam, great to have you back, sir. We have missed you in the Freedom Hut.
I have missed being in the Freedom Hut, but I think everyone around the country is currently in the hut and misses freedom.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Tell me about this story. It's an exclusive. Major Western media, this is at the National Pulse, major Western media, CNN, BBC, Reuters, the Associated Press, participated in Chinese Communist Party's Global Media Summit. You wrote this with Kingsley Cortez. What's going on here?
Yeah, that's right. It's a story that we've just popped. Something that we've been looking at for a long time is the Chinese Communist Party's influence in Western media outlets. And this is just the latest development as a result of a long-standing attempt by the Chinese Communist Party to co-opt Western media organizations, Western journalists, security analysts. For those that don't know, that at the National Pulse, which is a relatively new outlet that we've started, we are full-time dedicated right now to investigating the reach of the Chinese Communist Party into Western media agencies, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this story comes on the back of several days' investigation. What it shows is that back in 2017, the entity called CGTN, which is a subsidiary of the CCTV, the Chinese Communist Television Network, they held a conference in China called the Global Media Summit. It was the first of its kind. And at the first glance, when it appeared that they had invited Western journalists, I thought to myself, this cannot be true, that these entities took official part in this. But as we dug down into it and found footage online of these events, it turned out that CNN, the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, Reuters, the Associated Press, the Huffington Post, and many others apparently willingly participated, not just attending this Global Media Summit, but also taking part as panelists, as people on stage giving presentations. Over the course of the event, many things were discussed in the media space involving reporting, digital media, social media, and et cetera, as you would imagine at a media conference. But really what this Global Media Summit is and was, and it still goes on today, was an attempt by the Chinese Communist Party, CCTV and CGTN are wholly owned by the Chinese Communist Party, is an attempt by them to effectively launder their reporting, to allow the CNNs and the BBCs and the APs and the Reuters of the world to lend their legitimacy and their credibility as Western outlets to backing up what the Chinese propaganda arms are doing. And we have been following in detail what the Chinese propaganda arms have been doing in recent months, especially since the outset of the novel coronavirus, spreading misinformation, disinformation, attempting to sow discord in the West. Of course, we know everything related to the World Health Organization, the exclusion of Taiwan from all of that. And we heard from Secretary Pompeo on that this week. So really what it boils down to is this, and I encourage people to read the story. It's very detailed. We go into the detail of who was there and when and what they said, and you can read for yourself all the source links of everything there. Really what it comes down to is this, the question: why are Western media journalists, people who supposedly back transparency and democracy and who are quick to repudiate and rebuke President Trump and other Western leaders when they think they fall short of Western ideals, why are they taking part in Chinese communist propaganda?
It's a very good question. Raheem Kassam is asking it. He is the host of the War Room podcast. Go to thenationalpulse.com for his exclusive about Western media being used as really a a propaganda megaphone, or an extension, perhaps, of the Chinese Communist Party's propaganda megaphone. Raheem, you look at international relations from a 30,000-foot perspective a lot in the work that you do. Do you think that America now, Trump had been raising the alarm about China on trade for years, and much of the conservative establishment was essentially, or I should say the Republican establishment maybe, was against it. A lot of the Beltway intelligentsia, a lot of the think tankers, free trade became this thing. You just say, I'm for free trade, it means, okay, so we get pillaged by China and just keep taking it. That's what free trade apparently means, or that's what it meant, I should say. Do you think now we have seen, just on the right at least, a real shift, a solidification of the understanding of what Ted Cruz said, where these, the CCP is a bunch of evil commies that are trying to cause real problems for us?
I think we're just at the beginning of that shift, actually, and there aren't enough people taking it seriously enough, and there aren't enough people doing enough about it. I was speaking to people this weekend about this phenomenon of the fact that actually there is scant leadership in this area. Okay, you have the president of the United States who's been tough on China in terms of trade for absolutely decades now, we know, but who's coming in behind him? Who's actually doing the hard policy work? Who's doing the exposés? Obviously, we can do what we can with a small outlet like the National Pulse, a new outlet like the National Pulse. But you would expect that somewhere along the line, some Western media organization would actually go through all of this information over the past couple of decades and point out exactly what China has been doing, what they have been doing in Africa, what they have been doing in the South China Sea, what they have been doing in Hong Kong, what they have been doing in Latin America, and what they're indeed doing here in the United States of America, and indeed in my home country of the United Kingdom, where they effectively usurp Western media analysts, feed them a party line, the Chinese Communist Party line, and those lines are regurgitated outward into the Western media. We've exposed several of their participants in this over at the National Pulse over the last couple of weeks. There's also politicians who for decades have said that they believe in free trade. We did this story about the one of the Tennessee Senate hopefuls, Bill Hagerty, last week, whereby Tennessee, under his stewardship in the economic side of things, he was appointed by Governor Haslam to lead Tennessee's economic coordination. And under his tenure, just 1 year after he left, Tennessee was the single most reliant state on China and trade from China in the entire union. So I think we're just at the beginning of seeing all of this come to pass and come to fruition. And a credit to the people who have been on this for a very long time, like Senator Cruz, and indeed people who I haven't been a fan of in the past, like Marco Rubio, has done excellent work on this too. But I'm afraid we are just coming to the beginning of it. And also, I think a little bit of buyer beware on these things. Caveat emptor. Some of the people will be jumping on this story just to try and get their names in the headlines. You've got to be able to trust who's saying what, and I suspect and I suggest to the audience that you trust people who have been on this subject for a little bit of time, not people who are coming to it recently. And there are many of them out there. There are some serious experts in this field who you can look at if you're interested in China's influence in the Western world. But again, I think we're just at the very outset of getting our heads around just how much the Chinese have their hand in Hollywood, in our politicians, and beyond.
Speaking of Raheem Kassam, host of the War Room podcast, which, by the way, when am I going to be a guest on War Room, huh? Tell Bannon, qui bono, quid pro quo, you tell Bannon I miss him. But I also want to ask, man, this audience is very, Miller too, by the way, he's a nice guy. But this audience knows you very well because you filled in on the show numerous times in the past. We just want to check in, man. How are you? You're in quarantine, not specific quarantine, but we're all in lockdown, I should say. You're in lockdown in D.C. How's it going down there, and how does Raheem Kassam pass the time?
Well, Washington, D.C. and Capitol Hill especially are very strange places at the moment because you have this situation where if you're not walking down the street wearing a mask, people sort of start looking at you like you've murdered their family or something like that. It's a very rules-based way of looking at things, and Mayor Bowser has extended the lockdown in Washington, D.C. as well. However, in the DMV area, i.e. in Maryland and Virginia now, things are beginning to open up. So a lot of D.C. types are actually going out to Maryland to get their hair cut out. Obviously, you can see I haven't. But I did travel out, had a drive to Kent Island this weekend just to see what was going on and how the reopening was going. And it seems like, people are keen. And by the way, I was a lockdown person. They said 30 days to slow the spread. I was all in favor of that, but it stops at 30 days, right? We didn't give our permission for that to last any longer. And I am wholly on side of the people who now say, okay, we've done that. We slowed the spread. The hospitals weren't overwhelmed. That's what we're out to get. The nonsense that Fauci now and these guys are coming out with, that we can't return to normal until you're all pumped full of this rush vaccine, is a manifest nonsense, and it must be rejected. And I applaud the people, and I've seen some gym owners in New Jersey, for instance, and elsewhere, who are opening up safely. I applaud them. It's that kind of intrepid spirit, I think, that distances America from the rest of the world. So carry on, keep calm and carry on, as they say.
I mean, it's like Raheem could have been handling the reaction during the Blitz, folks. He's got you covered. Listen to Raheem. We got to have a stiff upper lip, right? That's what the Brits say.
That's exactly right. That old Blitz spirit comes back again. And interesting, keep calm and carry on as a thing was designed during the war, but it wasn't actually deployed very much during the war. It kind of caught on afterwards. Well, I say let's do as they intended with it during the Second World War. Let's bring it out as a national slogan now, right? Keep calm and carry on is exactly what most people in the country, and indeed the Western world, need to be hearing right now.
Absolutely, man. I co-sign. Raheem Kassam, everybody, War Room Podcast, also the National Pulse for his breaking story, just came out now on China and what the Western news media is doing in favor of China. Raheem, great to see you, man. Stay safe.
Thanks very much for having me, bud.
Al-Qaeda was involved in the strike on the United States back in December 6th of 2019. There was this shooting, some of you I'm sure will recall, that was at a U.S. naval base in Florida. 3 people were killed. The attacker was a Saudi named Second Lieutenant Mohammed Saeed al-Shamrani. He was a member of the Saudi Royal Air Force. He was there as part of a U.S. Navy training program. So we invite this guy in to train him, make him better at his job, and this disgusting piece of blank terrorist kills our people. And we had thought all along that there was likely a connection here to outside jihadist forces, and now they have additional evidence. According to FBI Director Christopher Wray, the Pensacola attack was actually the brutal culmination of years of planning. Al-Shamrani was actually radicalized in 2015. Now, there were you may recall as well that Al-Shamrani, one of the instructors referred to this guy as, quote, porn stash, which he really did not like. And initially, if I remember, now this is just going off of memory, there may have been some journalist that suggested that it was merely calling him porn stash that led him to go and kill three of our soldiers, or 3 of our military members. And he was shot and killed, thankfully, by a sheriff's deputy right on the scene. So he got taken out. So there's not going to be a trial or anything now. But one of the problems here was that this was one of those times where they could not access his communications. They couldn't access them because he had an Apple iPhone and they didn't have the codes to get into it. Looks like they did manage to get past the decryption, but Apple declined to do so. And this always brings up this very, very thorny debate over whether or not companies really should be forced to help the authorities to essentially leave a back door or create an override for the system, because once you do that, now the encryption is inherently weakened and now it's out there. And given what we've seen with the government, you see, with a terrorist, you'd always say, well, of course we should have that back door, right? Well, not everyone would say that, but most people would say. Some civil libertarians out there would probably disagree. But you see this guy, Al-Shamrani, this scum that killed 3 Americans who were part of this training program trying to help this guy out. This scum was able to hide at least his plans on his Apple device, and we would all say, well, shouldn't Apple do whatever law enforcement needs it to in this circumstance to help get around this encryption? for what seems to be a directed and outside-in attack, meaning outside of the U.S., foreign-directed jihadist plot inside the United States that took a long time. Also goes to show you, I mean, what a bunch of just not only the disgraceful and evil and disgusting, human beings, Al Qaeda in general, Al Qaeda operatives like this guy, but they took years, and so he shoots three innocent people, and then he gets blown away by a sheriff's deputy, and you say, what does Al Qaeda really think they accomplished with this? Ultimately, what we've seen is they're really just such a bunch of losers. That's how Trump refers to them, and a lot of journalists get very snide about that, but it's true. The people that do these kinds of things, these Al Qaeda or ISIS or any of these other, whether they're sympathizers or directed by these organizations, they're just bad people. They're losers. And their ideology is pathetic, and it's never going to win. And, we've been lucky for a while here in that we haven't had to focus in on the still very real jihadist threat around the world. Jihadism has receded. It took us almost 20 years and a lot, trillions of dollars of expense and counterterrorism operations all over the world and multiple wars. And whether those wars helped jihadism recede or not is a debate for another day. Certainly the one in Afghanistan, I believe, did, but Iraq we could talk about. But this attack in Pensacola was an Al Qaeda attack. So that's where we are on this one, and I think you'll see people at least reminded. And there was audio, I believe, that Al Qaeda's branch in Yemen had claimed this attack already. So AQAP is referred to. Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is considered the most active for external plotting in the world. Now, this because Yemen is a failed state in the middle of a civil war. It's got so many problems that we could do a whole show just cataloging them. Unfortunately, it's in terrible shape as a place, as a country. But there's freedom for Al Qaeda to operate there, to plan there, to train, to engage in more overt terrorist activity than it would in a lot of other places around the world. And by the way, in January, U.S. officials, according to Al Jazeera, so check the source, but U.S. officials announced that they were sending home 21 Saudi military students after an investigation revealed they had posted anti-American sentiments on social media pages. I didn't see this until now, or had, quote, contact with child pornography. What the hell are these Saudis doing? My God. But let's just focus in on the anti-American sentiment here for a second. Yeah, if you're a visitor in this country and you're putting up anti-U.S. posts and you're in a U.S. military installation at our behest, out. You should go. You have no free speech rights here if you're a foreigner visiting on U.S. soil on a U.S. military base. So the Saudis said they'd review the conduct of the 21 to see if they should face discipline. I'm guessing they didn't face any discipline, but this was an Al Qaeda plot. He was in contact with Al Qaeda, according to what they found on his phone. They finally got through the encryption. So, the terrorists took out 3 more of ours. Got to remain vigilant. This threat has receded now, but it could come back, and this is something that's still going to stay with us. So we've got to keep an eye on it.
Time for roll call.
Roll call time. Producer Mark, how was your weekend, buddy? How's everything going?
Pretty well. It went well. I stayed in.
Yeah, me too, actually. No big parties this weekend.
I'm going to make that joke until I can actually go somewhere other than my apartment.
Yeah, no, I can understand. Although I will say there were a lot more restaurants open for takeout this weekend than ever had been before. So that was encouraging to see, at least in my area. And I also there were people all over the streets. I mean, everyone's just like, get me out of here. They're all trying to just get outside and get air, and which is good. I mean, I wish that they didn't feel like they all had to be wearing masks. I mean, I see like 22-year-olds on electric scooters with a mask on. I'm like, what is that? But I know the mask politics. It is what it is.
I mean, I can barely exercise without a mask, so I can only imagine with one.
Yeah, it's also going to be really uncomfortable. I think people have really thought this through. When it gets to be 80, 85 degrees and you have to actually be outside and do things, to have a mask on, this is going to suck, okay? Doctors wear masks indoors in air-conditioned offices and hospitals. They're not walking around outside, going for a jog in the park with a mask on. This is nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm still going to do it in grocery stores or any indoor confined space, but I'm not doing it outside.
You watch any good movies over the weekend? Anything like that?
My wife had never seen the FX series on the OJ trial.
Oh my!
So we watched. I know stuff like that is news to her. It just amazes me. But we watched that, and she loved it. I watched it for the second time. It was great.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think it's the best thing Cuba Gooding Jr. has ever done.
Oh yeah, he portrays OJ so well in that.
He is amazing in that, and I also think that there's a scene there with Ron Perlman was Ron, what was his name? The guy who was killed. Who was
Ron Goldman.
Ron Goldman. Ron Goldman, his father, when he sits down with Marcia Clark, that scene like haunts you, you know.
Oh yeah.
Where the guy's just like, yeah, everyone's just talking about this. What about my son, who was a really good guy and did nothing wrong and had nothing to do with any of this, really. I mean, in some ways, you're just like, he was just, I mean, obviously the guy murders his wife. He's a psychopath, but there's just a guy who's standing next to him, and no one even talks about that, really. I mean, that doesn't get any. It's just, whew.
Even today, people still forget about him.
And look, I mean, I stumbled. I remembered his first name. I stumbled on his last name just because he didn't. Everyone knows Nicole Brown Simpson, right? Everyone knew that she was his wife. She's a beautiful woman. She's murdered, mother of his children. He murders her. I mean, it's just so horrific. But there was this other guy who was just there, who murdered with her, and it is a double murder. I mean, that's OJ didn't just kill the wife and mother of his own children. He was willing to kill a guy who just happened to be there. Yeah, well, and the fact that how old were you when that verdict? Gosh.
What was it, 96 when the verdict came down? I was 3.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you remember? But no, you do not.
I do not.
I remember it. It's the only time when I was in grammar school that all the teachers, they had like little radios in the rooms, which I didn't, maybe so we could get to the bomb shelters. It was some old like Soviet, thing. I don't know. Because I didn't realize that we even had these little old school radios in the room. And they all had them. And do I say room funny? I say room funny, don't I? Yeah.
A little bit.
The Snow Princess has pointed this out, that I kind of say almost like rum. But yeah, I don't know if that's a New York
you're like
thing.
Stewie from Family Guy.
Yeah. I sound like Stewie. My little sister's actually said that before.
Yes,
so.
you sound like Seth MacFarlane.
I do?
Yeah. Who is the voice of Stewie and Peter and most of the characters, actually.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting. So anyway, but I remember when the OJ verdict came down, and that was stunning because it was the first time as I was kind of a little kid. I was like, justice will prevail. Like, he's going to prison. Like, I was only the 8th grade, but we all knew the guy did it. It couldn't have been more obvious, right? And nope, justice did not prevail. It was a real moment. It was a real wow.
Everyone in the country except those 12 jurors knew that he did it.
Oh, no, and by the way, I think they knew that he did it too, but it wasn't about, right? When you get this from the show, it wasn't about that. It was about other things. Right. It was about other stuff. It wasn't about the fact that he was a double murderer. Oh, my gosh. Anyway, Kyle writes in here, Buck, you were talking about the progressive grab bag that is the HEROES Act. One of the things I noticed was suspending federal student loan payments until September 2021. I think that's meant to condition people to get used to not paying their student loans at all, and is a logical step toward advocating simply forgiving the debt as September 2021 approaches. My wife and I sacrificed luxuries and lived on one income to pay off 6 figures of student loan debt in less than 5 years, while friends of ours with similar debt took vacations and bought their first home. We're doing well now, and the thought of us being taxed in the future to help forgive the education choices made by others is infuriating. If this were the story of the ant and the grasshopper, Democrats want to punish the ant and reward the grasshopper. I don't actually know the story of the ant. Do you know the story of the ant? I mean, I can figure it out from context, but...
From context, I could figure it out, but no, I don't know.
Yeah, no. But as long as the praying mantis can still kill the murder hornets, we're all going to be okay. Did you see that video?
I did not.
It's amazing. It's a video went viral. When the murder hornet, you know about the murder hornets because you talked about it on the show. I also got to say something. The French bulldog that killed its owner, turns out it was a pit bull mix. Doesn't really count. I'm not throwing shade at pit bulls because, oh my gosh, your inbox gets wild.
Yeah, please don't go there.
I'm not throwing shade at pit bulls, okay? I know there can be lovely pets. You guys all know I love dogs. Everyone can just cool their chest. The pit bull is up there with the vaccine discussion as a general matter where you feel like you could talk about it, but people have very strong opinions on it. So,
and the pit bull people are actually right.
See, producer Mark. The pit bull people are actually right. So yeah, but it was a pit bull mix with a French bulldog. Because a French bulldog is just not large enough and powerful enough to kill a person. Okay, that's like saying your Chihuahua killed you. It's just not. Didn't make any sense. Turns out that it was a mix with a pit bull, so it's substantially larger and more powerful than a standard. And it had been in a fighting ring. Okay, so I'm just saying.
Right, so you're not scared
like,
of Tallulah? Yeah.
I was like, Tallulah, am I being too slow with your chicken over the weekend? You know, I was like, she started looking at me like, do I look like a big drumstick walking around this place? I don't know. But no, she would never. She just wants her belly scratched. But the murder hornets, yeah, there's a video of a praying mantis against a murder hornet. That praying mantis takes out that murder hornet, no problem.
That does sound awesome. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, you should. It's actually worth seeing. She's like, damn, praying mantises are. There's a reason why they have their own kung fu style. You see what I did there?
I did. Yeah. Well done.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, I'll move on. Kenny, you're right about the people with cancer who can't get checked because of the lockdown. My mother-in-law just had surgery to remove cancer. We found out it had spread while we were on lockdown, and doctors were not allowed to perform the procedure. We will never know whether the 2 weeks we waited made the difference, but to suggest the lockdowns have no cost is clearly wrong. Kenny, I'm so sorry. And this was foreseeable for the country as a policy matter. Of course, this kind of tragic circumstance was going to happen. But we were not allowed, when we were discussing policy, Kenny, we were not allowed to have a discussion about this and what the effects would be. You know, we were not allowed to bring this in. If you did, you didn't care enough about, you know, whatever it was, frontline workers or Granny or whatever. And it's like, well, what about Granny that might get cancer? What about your mom? What about you, right? What about anybody who might get cancer? Oh, no, that wasn't allowed to be a part of the discussion. Kenny also writes, also, I'm a second year at Harvard Business School. Wow, Kenny, very nice. Very impressive, sir. It's pretty woke, but I try to spread freedom. Yeah, you do. You listen to this show. Just a quick defense of Harvard. They neither requested nor received any money from the CARES Act. They shouldn't have been blamed for qualifying for the $9 million. The CARES Act allocated money to colleges, and Harvard qualified, but they never asked for nor received the money. There are lots of things these woke schools do wrong, but in this case, the conservative anger was misdirected. It was the people who wrote the bill who were sloppy, not the school's fault. Kenny, noted. Thank you for the update. That sounds about right, considering how many holes and problems there were in the bill other than that. Eric, hey, Buck, just finished watching the new Jerry Seinfeld special. As a married man of 15 years, I have to say his bit on marriage was spot on. Food for thought for you to prepare for the Snow Princess, whoever she might be. Well, thank you very much, Eric. Producer Mark and I both really enjoyed that special. I still laugh about the porta potty thing whenever I think about it. But yes, it's. Do you remember the married part of it, Mark?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering. That doesn't really stick out to me. I know we talked about it, but I can't remember what the bit
It was usual, jokes about your wife nagging you and stuff like that.
Okay. Fair enough.
The normal stuff.
It's Seinfeld. I get it. All right, more roll call here in the Freedom Hut with producer Mark and yours truly, Jake. Yesterday, my wife went shopping and came home with the comment, when are things going back to normal? I think a lot of people are wondering that, and my answer is, while President Trump is in office, maybe never. But if non-specific Democrat is elected president, then the flipping of the script will be immediate and jarring. As long as Dem media, see what I did there? Very nice, Jake, can scare people into staying home or wearing masks, Trump will suffer and the economy will be collateral damage. But they're smart enough to know that normalcy only returns when public opinion is fully flipped into thinking we have to be brave and go back to living our lives knowing the cost. That's when the elites get to lecture us on our courage friends, quote, courage friends go shopping, on their nauseating TikTok videos, now filmed on their beachfront instead of their den full of important looking books. The credibility shelf, which is an important thing for your live hits at home. See, I have a credibility stack behind me here in the Freedom Hut because my apartment is so small. I don't even really have a formal bookshelf in here because my apartment's so small. So that's how living large we are here in the Freedom Hut. No bookshelf because no room because apartment too small. But I have books. David, hey, Buck, I cannot get through a day without listening to your program. You provide so much important information that I would never hear from the mainstream media. I've listened to your show for several years on Boston 1200 Talk Radio, but recently discovered what podcasts are and subscribed to the Buck Sexton podcast. It is great. Well, thank you so much, man. But I was wondering, what is more beneficial for your show and ratings, listening on the radio or on the podcast? I love the podcast, but if it's more beneficial for me to listen on the radio, I will switch back. The answer, David, is it's great on both, man. Whatever is easiest for you, whatever you can most consistently and comfortably listen, whatever way, that's the way to do it. So please do continue to listen if you like listening on the podcast. BuckSexton.com is now a place where we have the podcast for you to listen. You can go on Spotify. You can go on Apple Podcasts and
the iHeartRadio app.
Yes, the iHeartRadio app. iHeartRadio being the company that we work for. Good call, Mark. So yes, those would be the ways you can do it. And you know what, David? And thank you so much for listening. But the best thing you could also do is if you got some friends who you know are conservatives, please share with them the podcast and explain to them. I mean, I listen to books on tape now. I mean, I'm somebody who is really always operating in the audio world. I don't really listen to other podcasts. So I'll listen to some history podcasts. Malta, I know, guys, it's coming. But I know there's other history podcasts out there. I'll listen to them sometimes just out of curiosity because I like history. But if you could tell somebody so they would listen, that would be the single most effective, most helpful thing you could do to help the Freedom Hut keep the doors open. You know, otherwise, Producer Mark is going to end up, you know, I don't know. Producer Mark is going to open up a Italian restaurant with good food but grouchy service, and we don't want that.
I would open up a bar and name it Puzzles.
Name Puzzles?
Yeah.
Why Puzzles?
Do you not get the reference?
No.
It's from How I Met Your Mother. Barney and Ted wanted to open a bar and name it Puzzles.
Wow, you just snuck in a How I Met Your Mother reference past me.
I did.
I'm going to hang my head in shame. I should have gotten that. I'm sorry about that.
I thought
guys.
you would, so I figured that was an easy
No,
reference.
I know. I love that show. And I feel like not a lot of Team Buck really watch that show. I think it's great for what it is. And also there's a lot of nostalgia for me because as a guy who's been in New York and been single for many years, the show resonates. The show resonates for sure. And I you know, it's where I learned about the hot crazy scale, for example, which is a thing, the hot crazy scale. I'm not saying that I subscribe to it, just in case the Snow Princess is hearing this. I'm not saying there's no such thing as a hot crazy scale in real life.
Talk your way out of this one, Buck. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's just a thing that I've heard about from the show that I do not rely on at all.
Sure.
It's not. No. Okay.
You're going to have to spend the night in Tallulah's crate.
Next one. Corey writes, Producer Mark is awesome. He's smart. Corey knows how to get in a roll call. Hey, guys, just wanted to, as a reaction to Red China's obvious negligence and response to the Rona, why doesn't the U.S. open an embassy in Taipei, Republic of China, as a result recognizing them as a country? It would punish the CCP at home by not being able to bring the country whole as they see it and push back on the influence in the region. Corey, I mean, it's a good idea, except that would be seen as super provocative by the Chinese Communist Party, and no one has the I need to find a word to say when someone doesn't have the, because, you know, in common language, we all know what the word is that I want to use, but I feel like I shouldn't say that on the radio. And so I end up saying gall, but that sounds like I'm, you know, Mrs. Doubtfire up here or something. You're like, oh, he doesn't have the gall to pull that off. Like, we all know.
Can we say cojones?
No, that's en español. You can't just go with en español.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, yeah, same idea. I don't know. I feel like I shouldn't, you know, I feel like that B word for some of the audience, we got some young folks listening and everything else, and it's a little, I don't know. I think it's a little brash, a little on the edge.
What do you normally play sports with, Buck?
I mean, yes, that is true. There usually are balls in sports.
Yes.
Soccer ball, basketball. But to say that one has... But, you know, it's tough. There's a lot of phrases. See, the problem is that phrases they kind of get numbed over time, and we all use it more and more. You know, like when you run around and you call someone a jerk, for example, which is acceptable. We're allowed to say jerk. That guy's a jerk. But, you know, you get too into the derivation. It's true also, you know, you talk about people who are, you know, an idiot, for example. You talk about some of these words we use, you know, the history of them. But those are now considered acceptable to use, but it's always changing. It's always changing. Brandon writes, hey, Buck, I just saw that Tides of History just did an episode on the Siege of Malta. I can't wait for yours. Is it going to be posted in your normal podcast link? Well, what the hell is Tides of History? And why are they doing a Malta thing?
Well, probably because you've been talking about it for 3 months.
Who the heck is Tides of History, and why are they stealing my Malta thunder here? I've read like 5 books on Malta in the last month. Tides of History. I got to see what. And now I'm, of course, giving them free advertising on the show, even by mentioning it. Oh, it's I have no idea. I don't even know if it exists. I'm not even going to look it up. Who cares? Because my Malta podcast will be amazing. I'm going to leave it there, friends. Thank you so much for joining. As always, appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here. And, yeah, good to go. Shields high, everybody.